François Legault, the man who has a serious chance of becoming the next Quebec premier and arguably the most conservative one in at least 50 years, has spent nearly as much time as a professional politician as he did a business executive. He seems genuinely surprised at the suggestion businessman would take second place to politician on his RSUM. He starts doing the math out loud on what came after he founded Air Transat. I started in politics in 1998. I was 41, so that's 21 years in business, 18 in politics. Remember, I took 2 years off in there, he says in an interview, exhaling in relieved self-affirmation. For me, I'm still more a businessman. I'm more a pragmatic guy. I like economics and finance. Those are the main reasons I'm in politics. Story continues below advertisement. Mr. Legault began in politics in the post-referendum era as a Parti Québécois cabinet minister recruited by Lucien Bouchard. He left politics in 2009 and returned in 2011 to convert to federalism and co-found the conservative coalition Avenir Québec. Mr. Legault is a bit fussy about labels. He doesn't like to be called a federalist, even if he believes Quebec's place is within Canada. He wants to limit spending, cut taxes and immigration levels and seriously improve the business environment in Quebec, but denies he's all that right-wing. Now, with 10 months until the next election, the 60-year-old Mr. Legault may be on the cusp of getting his hands on some economic levers. 3 polls in a row have showed him in first place, with a fixed election date of October 1. The campaign is already on. The Liberals have scattered tax cuts and boosted spending after squeezing it for 3 years. Both Premier Philippe Couillard and Parti Québécois leader Jean-François Legault have focused attacks on Mr. Legault like never before since he founded the coalition Avenir Québec in 2011. Mr. Legault is often asked if he has peaked too soon. Nobody would be unhappy about being first, he says. But we can't take anything for granted. Quebec's conservative third parties have been competitive before in pre-election polls only to fade to second or third as the question of Quebec independence polarized voters between the Liberals and PQ. This time is different, insists Mr. Legault. The PQ is polling a distant third and has set aside the promise of a quick sovereignty vote. At each and every election, the ballot question ends up being on the sovereignty of Quebec, Mr. Legault says. For us, it's clear. Our project is within Canada. This will be the first election in years that the real issue will be a worn-out, corrupt government, not the sovereignty of Quebec. Story continues below advertisement. Story continues below advertisement. Mr. Legault joined the PQ in 1998, he says, because he believed he could control the business plan better with 100% of the ability to tax and spend government money. I realized maybe 10 years ago we don't need sovereignty to increase wealth, and we don't need to protect our language and values. Now, Mr. Legault says his long-term national goal is to get Quebec off federal equalization payments, $11.1 billion that accounts for 10% of the provincial budget. It's a task he admits would take at least 20 years even in an unprecedented economic boom.